Scott Adkins has it all: speed, technique, presence, and a martial mastery that few in the history of cinema have ever reached. So, why did a martial artist with so much talent end up relegated to secondary roles or forgettable villains? What you're about to discover today not only reveals how Hollywood really works, but also why talents like Scott Adkins are being wasted. The film industry has spent years searching for the ultimate Batman, one who not only wears the suit, but fights like the real Dark Knight. But when Ben Affleck arrived, the fights were handled by stunt doubles. With Christian Bale, the cameras shook to hide his limitations. And with Robert Pattinson, the action scenes were the weakest part of the entire movie. Meanwhile, there was one actor who could do it all himself. No doubles, no effects, no editing to save him. A martial artist with decades of training, real physical presence, and absolute respect for action. That Batman already exists. His name is Scott Adkins. The problem is that Hollywood never looked his way. They preferred to spend millions trying to manufacture what he already had naturally. A decision so absurd that not even Van Damme, one of his greatest idols, could understand it. This great legend has acknowledged the talent of Scott Adkins, especially his mastery of martial arts and action choreography. Both perform the perfect split. Both master spectacular spinning kicks. Both have that tough charisma, and both were born for this genre. But unfortunately, the difference lies in the context. When Van Damme arrived in Hollywood in the 80s, the industry was hungry for action heroes. A single film turned him into a global star. When Scott reached the same level of skill, Hollywood had already changed. They no longer wanted real martial artists. They wanted famous faces who could sell franchises, even if they didn't know how to throw a single punch. Hollywood had the perfect chance to create a generational transition, Van Damme passing the torch to Adkins, the old master blessing the new warrior, and instead, they placed them together in low-budget, direct-to-streaming films that no one would see, as if they wanted to bury that connection before the audience could notice it. And if you don't believe me, now comes the painful part. Together, we're going to look at how Hollywood, time and time again, wasted Scott Adkins' talent. In The Bourne Ultimatum, he was barely a nameless thug who dies in seconds. In X-Men Origins, he played Weapon 11, a role where you don't even see his face, performing complex movements for the character. In The Expendables 2, he was the villain Jason Statham quickly took down. His big moment only served to make someone else shine, a role that elevated the protagonist more than himself. And in Doctor Strange, he appears in a minor role as Lucian. Do you see the pattern? Marvel had him right there. They could have turned him into Taskmaster, Iron Fist, Shang-Chi, any character that truly demanded martial arts skills. And all that time, Scott Adkins was available, waiting, perfecting his craft, proving in independent films that he was the answer everyone had been looking for. But in 2006, something happened that would change action cinema forever. Scott Adkins brought to life Yuri Boyka in Undisputed 2, a Russian prisoner, an unstoppable fighter, a character who had everything to become as legendary as Rocky, Rambo, or John Wick. And he did. But only for those who truly love action and martial arts films. An anti-hero with a redemption arc, fights choreographed with surgical precision, memorable lines, and an actor completely devoted to his role.
I'm the most complete fighter in the world.
The Undisputed saga became a cult masterpiece. Fans adored it, and the underrated English actor proved he could carry an entire franchise on his shoulders. And what did Hollywood do? Nothing. Not a single major offer. Not one studio said, "This guy could be our next great hero." Meanwhile, they kept pouring millions into reboots, unnecessary sequels, and actors with zero charisma for action. While Hollywood ignored Adkins, they stuck with the most ridiculous formula. Actors with no real training, millions spent on effects, and shaky cameras hiding what they couldn't do. They chose performers with no martial arts background for Shang-Chi, who had to train for months just to look believable, and actors like the various Batmen, who depended on stunt doubles and expensive editing to simulate what Adkins could do in a single, uncut take. Ever since Ben Affleck left the role, a campaign began to grow online. Scott Adkins for Batman, and it makes perfect sense. Batman isn't a superhero with powers. He's a master of martial arts, the world's most dangerous detective. A man who defeats his enemies through technique, strategy, and pure physical skill. Who better to play him than an actor who masters more than 6 martial arts disciplines? Who can fight without stunt doubles? Who has the physique and intimidating presence that Batman demands? But Warner Brothers chose Robert Pattinson. A great dramatic actor, no doubt. But a martial arts master? Not at all. And I hope this isn't misunderstood. This isn't an attack on Pattinson. It's a direct question to Hollywood. Why spend millions training someone to look capable when you already have someone who is? The answer is simple and painful. Because Scott Adkins isn't a box office name. Because he doesn't have 50 million followers on Instagram. Because Hollywood, once again, values marketing over real talent. And so, the most physically prepared actor of his generation remained in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity, until, almost by accident, it arrived. In John Wick 4, Scott Adkins played Killa, an obese German villain with gold teeth and a grotesque aura. And in just a few minutes of screen time, he did the unthinkable. He almost stole the movie from Keanu Reeves. The reviews were unanimous. Scott Adkins is the best part of the film. Fans demanded a spin-off. His fight scene went viral within hours. But here's the irony. To shine, Scott had to do it under 40 kilos of prosthetics, hiding his body, his face, and everything that made him unique. Once again, he was cast as the enemy to defeat. And even so, he shined. Even limited, disguised in a secondary role. Scott Adkins proved he has something that can't be manufactured: presence. Scott Adkins is magnetic, precise, and most importantly, what action movie fans value the most. Scott Adkins is believable. When you watch him move, you're not seeing an actor pretending to know how to fight. You're watching a real martial artist with decades of discipline behind every punch, every movement, every look. There are no quick cuts hiding his moves, no editing disguising his mistakes, because there simply aren't any. Imagine what he could achieve as a leading man, with the John Wick budget, with creative freedom, with the right studio behind him. But we'll never know, because for Hollywood, that experiment isn't worth the risk. Scott Adkins isn't even that old, and he's still in better shape than most actors 20 years younger than him. He continues performing stunts that defy logic. He keeps proving, film after film, that he's the best at what he does. But time doesn't forgive, and Hollywood is letting his moments slip away, little by little. They didn't make him the perfect Batman. They didn't turn him into Van Damme's successor. They didn't build a franchise around his talent. They never gave him the budget his skills deserved. Instead, they pushed him into low-budget films, secondary roles, and as the premium stunt double for others. They used him so others could look better. And now, when the industry is starting to rediscover that real fights matter, that authenticity has weight, that physical talent is valuable again, it's almost too late. Because this isn't just the story of Scott Adkins. It's the story of how Hollywood, again and again, chooses the safe over the exceptional, the commercial over the authentic, the name over the talent. How many mediocre superhero movies with soulless fights could we have avoided if they had just given him a chance? How many memorable franchises were lost because no executive had the courage to bet on him? How many generations of action fans grew up without their John McClane, without their Terminator, without their definitive hero? Just because Hollywood decided Scott Adkins wasn't worth the risk? But here's the ultimate truth. Scott Adkins never needed Hollywood's permission to become a legend. In Eastern Europe, his name is spoken with respect. In Asia, Boyka is a cultural icon. And in the world of real action cinema, he is, without question, the gold standard. Hollywood had 20 years to do the right thing. 20 years to make him a star. 20 years to give us the Batman we deserved. 20 years to build the legacy Van Damme had paved the way for. And they chose not to. That wasn't Scott Adkins' failure. It was Hollywood's greatest failure of this century, because the name is Boyka. And Hollywood never knew what to do with him. But if there was someone who did get the chance to shine, someone who fought for every second on screen and built his path with sweat, effort, and blood, it was Jean-Claude Van Damme. His story is that of a dreamer who crossed an ocean with one goal: to conquer Hollywood. And he did it, facing rejection, poverty, and countless obstacles until he became an icon of action cinema, the hero who, despite his falls, still lives in our hearts. Don't miss his story, how he went from handing out flyers on the streets of Los Angeles to becoming a legend. And if you're passionate about stories of redemption, struggle, and glory, subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next.